First of all, a very warm welcome to our distinguished speaker for today, Amit Sharma from EXL, and also to all the wonderful participants who joined in. There are many who have joined in week after week after week. This is the 49th webinar in the Analytics Wednesday series that we are holding. It's been a wonderful run for Summer Audit also, because when we thought about it that we will do a weekly Analytics Wednesday, we did not think that it will run for a year almost. It's almost a year now that we are having weekly webinars, live webinars with distinguished speakers who join in and speak to us and enlighten us. And then these webinars are put onto the Sama YouTube channel, where there's a lot of advantage taken by the internal audit fraternity and by people who are interested in analytics across the world. So I think that's a very good thing, because we have a library of distinguished speakers speaking on the topic, which is available on the Sama YouTube channel. As you know, Sama Audit has been at the forefront for the past 20 years. I'm just repeating that in bringing analytics to India and to the region, to the South Asian region, where we have been working with government, working with private sector organizations, working with NGOs in bringing analytics when nobody was talking about it 20 years back. It's only now that people have started, analytics is the flavor of the season sort of thing, when everybody wants to adopt analytics because of the exponential rise in computerization, digitalization, etc. So, we are seeing a lot of things happening, a lot of action in this space. And I would formally introduce Amit before, I ask him to speak to us and talk to us and interact with us. So Amit has got around 20 years of experience, expertise across IT, manufacturing, banking, and insurance industries in various functional domains of internal audits, risk management, and compliance. He's an electronics engineer. So I think that's creditable, because very rare we come across where we have electronic engineers, and I feel that you need diversity to really add value to the profession. So, electronics engineer is a certified internal auditor, certified information systems or security auditor, certified fraud examiner, certified Six Sigma Master Black Belt, and has a certification in risk management assurance, CRMA. He is also recognized as a thought leader in the subject of fraud, governance, risk management, and compliance, and has spoken in various forums across IAA and ISACA. He is currently working with a US MNC, multinational, listed on NASDAQ USA as the Vice President Corporate Audit, where he heads internal audit across APAC geography, in addition to leading fraud investigations for the company. He is also a member of the Institute of Internal Auditors Delhi chapter, and there he is currently on the executive committee, and he functions as a treasurer for Institute of Internal Auditors India Delhi chapter. So I think with that very short introduction, floor is all yours, Amit.
Thank you, Mr. Deepji. You've been very kind. First of all, I'd actually like to thank you for having me. I think it's been a pleasure, for coming to this forum. As you've said, I think you've managed to, this is what, the 49th session?
Yes.
So, I mean, you've managed to get, people together and have all these insightful forums. I hope whatever little experience I can share today will actually be useful for the people who are actually would be part of the today's session, and also will be listening to this on YouTube. So with this, let me just go into the discussion. So I'm sure all of you will agree that the pace currently of all technological advancements, with all volumes of data is now becoming increasingly easy to have. All of this has resulted in data analytics and innovation, something as a top priority for all internal audit departments. Now, the strategy for integrating data analytics within audits and all related activities, again, all this actually has got the ability to transform how the function operates, evolves, innovates. Now, all this ease that is there with the availability of data, you actually have a lot of opportunities to streamline processes again, and data analytics actually holds the key, for unlocking all these opportunities. So all chief audit executives or internal audit professions, they actually need to understand the value and potential that data analytics, actually has got. Now, when Mr. Deepji actually asked me, to come and share my thoughts on analytics, I actually thought there's been a lot that actually been talked about. Why analytics? What are advantages that you can get out of it, etc. So the why is I think already been talked about. I thought that perhaps I can share my little experience, that on the how we've actually gone about the whole analytics transformation, there, and try to give you a perspective, of what has that journey been of doing that whole analytics transformation. With this, I hope that, as I said, this will actually help you in the day-to-day work that you do, both for audit and across even the organization. Now, before we actually go about doing the whole analytics transformation, I think it's very important to first understand that everybody will again agree that analytics will always remain a top priority from an innovation perspective, purely because the potential that it has. Now, how do we do this? What is the maturity of analytics, when we actually go about looking at it in various companies? So for this, we actually, I'm actually referring to a survey that was actually conducted by Grant Thornton, sometime back. And the whole objective of the survey was, actually, there are various parameters of the survey. The whole intention was trying to understand, okay, the maturity of data analytics in organizations, how well it's used for internal audit work, etc. So one very interesting statistics over there, I think almost everyone, it was like almost like unanimous that everybody knows. In fact, I think 92%, that survey came out with the result of at least 92% of senior leaders, they actually understand, the value of integrating all your enterprise-wide data analytics into their respective processes. So I think there's no a second thought on should we do it or not. But I think where all leaders or where all professionals actually struggle is trying to maximize that whole return of investment. So how can we go about doing that? So with this, perhaps if I can just refer to the exhibit that you can actually see on the screen below. This is actually somewhere, and this is also coming out from the same survey that Grant Thornton came up. Some of the ways of how you can incorporate data analytics, within processes. And you've got various 4 main buckets that you can see out. I'll talk about the first and foremost. In case you want to go and make analytics a priority, the first and foremost is go and create focus areas. I mean, if you can't do everything at once, you'll all fail. It's always important to go focus on certain areas and make sure that, okay, this is where I want to actually, look at all the investments, the priorities. This is something that will give me the best return easily. Now, when you're doing this also, it's important to also focus on leadership buy-in. I cannot emphasize the importance of that. Till the top management, till the leadership is bought in, and we'll also talk about that in later slides. I think this whole thing it'll just become a small project, but it'll never be successful. So creating that focus area and getting the buy-in from the top management is something that will be very, very important over here. Second, is how you can go about increasing insights, perhaps a step. And this is where perhaps what you can do is go about create some or define some key critical indicators that there are within processes. And these indicators can actually provide some sort of insights into, some adoption of analytics within processes. Some of it might be going on also, but the only reason I'm actually calling this out is if audit goes and also does this, they will put their own lens of it and not just try to just put in a business perspective on analytics, but also look at it from a control perspective. Now, when audit come, as I said, you can try to evaluate what is the health of respective controls that are there within the respective processes. And how it can also help is when you go and define your scope of internal audit, depending on the health of these, matrices that you've defined, you can actually do a more focused, a more refined scoping, more like a risk-based approach, that this is where I see more of a problem, and that is where you can focus. It'll actually give automatically more value from an audit perspective. Now, further, creating value. Now, this is perhaps, I think, something that's understood, that when you go about showcasing that, okay, we want to do an analytics transformation towards it, how can you go about doing it, right? How you can go demonstrate measurable business value insights, how you can actually leverage analytics to identify new emerging risks within the organization. Now, I've already said one big way of doing or creating value can be focusing on, say, new areas, or defining insights or data or even intelligence that's required in these processes, something that wasn't there earlier. Second, also go about achieving operational readiness, getting into a BAU, or what we call as a business as usual model. Once you've got all this, the more you'll be able to demonstrate these success stories, the more easier it'll be to showcase value. And then lastly, maximize your investments. How? By showing that these are repeatable solutions. So it was not just a one-stop project. This is something that is now there to stay, and over a period of time, it will continue to give value. How? So it can be just a simple thing as what we talked about, these key indicators. Now, on a consistent basis, you can go and show that now there is enhanced professional intelligence that the top management is getting, on these key indicators. All this will actually help your cause on showcasing analytics as being, one big initiative. That's something that has to be implemented across the organization. Right now, once we've understood this, let's perhaps try to get into this. And I talked about this a little bit. Very important, on the way to go about doing analytical transformation, how you can incorporate it. One of the key steps is make sure you get sponsorship from the top management and the audit committee. I cannot, as I said, I cannot emphasize how important this is. And the reason is, without that adequate sponsorship, you can lack perhaps resources or even direction. And all this will actually result in more of a reactive approach when you're going about making decisions and strategy. Right now, mind you, all effective sponsorship also requires collaboration and agreement across the organization. So you can't just have one part of an organization who sees some value, but the other doesn't. You'll have to get that sponsorship on all parts of the organization. And then only you can go about prioritizing the opportunities and doing some, resource allocation accordingly. Now, let me tell you a very interesting thing. And the same survey that I was actually referring to, there is effective sponsorship, for analytics. And this survey actually showed it out again, that that the more than 80% actually said that they would want to, get audits or analytics incorporated within audits, right? But however, the dichotomy over here is the survey also came up with one more interesting thing. While more than 80% of auditors or chief audit executives agreed that they want to do it, less than 40% of the organizations actually consistently use it. So there is immense potential. So there, people know on what they're supposed to do. However, it's not getting implemented that fast. So that's something that is definitely food for thought and something that we might, want to look into. Now, another insight that I can actually share on how analytics is used again. Perhaps historically, whenever you say analytics, most people think that, okay, just reports or, just those sort of things where I might just some measures or something that I get from particular areas. That is just, analytics for me. where audit can also try to help is make sure that you can focus the usage of analytics into specific areas. And I can give one very important area over here, that when you go about identifying top risks in an organization, what are the kind of mitigation that happens over there? So you'll actually find out, you'll actually see, sorry, this survey that I was referring to, the Grant Thornton survey, it actually came up with another important inference. What it just showed was, normally data analytics is used primarily for compliance testing and all, right? Nothing beyond that. However, if there was adequate sponsorship, they would have liked to, do this in, say, continuous monitoring, again, continuous auditing, predictive analytics, machine learning, all what have you. All these tools is something that can actually help us to, go about doing this more effectively. Now, as you can see over here, this exhibit, we have the top risks that most of the chief audit executives were talking about, and what is the kind of analytics that they actually use to mitigate these risks. And if you can just see over here, cybersecurity, very surprisingly, cybersecurity, and I think it is one of the top risks in today's scenario. I mean, the event of, cyber attacks that's actually happening on organizations. Surprisingly, this survey actually showed that most organizations are least likely to use analytics to manage cybersecurity, in spite of, this being, such a big thing. And this is where I think, we can showcase, the power of analytics, and see if we can try to focus using, so rather than using old thoughts, processes, see if we can try to focus the power of analytics into these risk areas, and see if they can come out, we can come out with more areas that can actually be of value, and they can actually focus into. And this will also help integrate your risks with analytics again, and automatically there'll be more value that will be coming out of this whole exercise. So yeah. Now again, and we've talked about how we should get sponsorship from management, how we can go about it. Another important element is, before I go into the analytics transformation, how I can make sure it's all ingrained. It's very important to ensure alignment with the IT department. And again, and I can give many examples that I've got from my experience, that often audit teams, we struggle to manage ERP changes that happens, or evolving data. There have been many times there have been some change to the to the IT architecture, and the underlying data, or the impact of that change, can actually go about altering even historical reports or historical records, right? Because knowingly or unknowingly, some of those rule sets have gotten altered. So it's very important to have proper change management practices with the IT department, right? Along with the review. I mean, when we go about setting the whole analytics transformation, make sure that the IT department goes along with the owners of the data and looks at the impact of the change on every on the data, on the rule sets. All that is definitely of paramount importance. Now, in order to create proper alignment, also audit professionals or chief audit executives, they go about need to understand the major applications. You need to evaluate the entire ecosystem, make sure all the applications are included over there, one, and how do they fit also within the respective analytics program. You might have some standalone systems, and that's where actually it goes between the crack. You will find more often than not, there are a lot of standalone systems, perhaps, which are not integrated with the base data point and all. When you are going about making that whole analytical journey, that analytical transformation, it's important to see the impact of that as well and make sure they're integrated. Also, at least the data is integrated, more effectively. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, we need to make sure that any changes to the IT environment are all looked at from an adequate basis. Now, when you go about embarking on a path to analytical, journey, you also need to understand. I'm sorry. Did the screen sharing shop?
Yes, Amit.
Okay, it's back now, right?
Yes, please.
So yeah, so coming back on, when you're going about doing this whole thing, it's also important to try to understand, where you stand, because I'm sure all of us will appreciate going about this whole analytics transformation is an enormous undertaking. And again, it has to be done across the organization. It's very important to figure out where you actually stand in that journey. What's the current state and what's, the desired state that you want to go about over here. So I just wanted to give you a reference to a basic, 5-level digital maturity framework that's come out, very similar to CMMI that you may see. Again, there are a lot of maturity models that are out there in the market. I won't go about talking all of them, but I just thought that this one digital maturity framework is something that can be of use to to the participants or to the people who are looking at this. So if we talk about the most basic training, or what we call as a level 1, which is over here, the extreme left hand side over here, this is where we're talking about typically, you've got we are at a very basic stage. They've got either no capabilities or very, very limited capabilities. Activities are more on an ad hoc basis. Again, there's no predictable performance. Again, all success is basically based on an individual competence. Again, it's not a repeatable one. The most basic digital maturity that you can have over here. A level 2 is something that you can have, say, more from a tactical or a developing perspective. So what this means is that you've got some set of capabilities. Again, you do have processes, but they're still very basic. They're very rudimentary. Again, and success is repeatable. Again, but not consistent. So you might have some areas it's being done, but some other areas it's not being done that well. Going on to a level 3, perhaps focus, and I'll say from experience, typically when organization starts, they're somewhere between level 1 and level 2 again. And the idea is to take this, more to a level 5 sort of a thing. Now, we talk of the center, the level 3. I guess here you'll find capabilities are developed, they're adopted consistently. Again, they're used to drive some audit activities again, and management starts using and defines goals and objectives for these processes. And there's adequate communication also along with them. So this is something that you can look forward to. And then going forward to a more advanced level 4, this thing, where you've seen that the capabilities are more aligned with the strategy. Again, they're well developed. There's a proper governance that's put around them. Processes are there again, and it's working well. Coming up to the extreme end, the level 5, or the most mature, as you may say, all well defined capabilities, properly institutionalized. Again, and you have continuous improvement as well on all of this. Now, another important statistic that I think all of you should be aware of, which again came out from this survey, a current state of analytics maturity, or say analytics competencies that we have. So this survey came up with a very interesting statistic that right now only 13% of chief audit executives actually have strong analytical competencies within their audit team. So there is still a lot of scope for getting these competencies, analytics people need to go about understanding, what analytics, what data analytics is, and then they can go about using them more and more effectively. Yeah. Moving on to the next one. And this is where I think this will be of use. So now once, you've got companies and audit functions who've identified, they've gathered data, again, many methods you can use to, go extract insights and add value and all. So from what can be some of the techniques and technologies that we can actually go about using them on the ground? So I've just talked, I've talked about some 4 basic data analytics techniques that, people can use when they're actually doing these works. Again, a very high level sort of a thing. We can actually talk about this perhaps in a separate forum we can talk about how we've actually used each and every technique within audit. But right now I just wanted to give an overview, to all the listeners that we have. So first is descriptive analytics, perhaps the most basic, or what we call as the least sophisticated. But this is, I guess, the one that's used the most frequently, of the analytical tools over here. What this essentially does is you can actually use these techniques to condense large set of data into smaller and more meaningful bits of information. Again, and some examples, of some descriptive analytic techniques are, you have measures of central tendency, basically average, standard deviation, spread, those sort of information, skewness, etc. And then you can do some sort of box plots or run charts or scatter plots. There's a lot of opportunities for this to do, in your respective processes. So you'll actually be doing more descriptive analytics. Now, going further, the second one is diagnostic analytics. And this is where, this particular data analytical technique actually gives you more insight into, why certain trends or certain or specific incidents have occurred. So auditors can actually go about using this particular technique to try to evaluate data and see it from different perspectives, more deeper perspectives. Again, like say, for example, trying to segment a particular data set by a product or a geography. Again, try to get some understanding of business performance or market dynamics, all these sort of things. Some actual tools that you can actually use that are called diagnostic techniques is, we would have heard of statistical control charts. Again, there are multiple control charts that can be used. We have U charts, C charts, average range charts, etc. All those are part of diagnostic techniques. You have what we call as gauge repeatability and reproducibility. That's also another diagnostic technique. Balance scorecard, many more that we can use, from a diagnostic perspective. The next data analytical technique that we have is predictive analytics. Now, this is, where you actually go about trying to forecast or identifying trends and then forecast the outcome. Basically extracting information, applying some assumptions, again, drawing correlations, and accordingly then say, okay, basis on the trend that you've had in the past or, at a certain stage, this is the outcome that you can go about predicting in the future. So there are multiple, tools that we can use over here. Some of them, are probability distributions, say, for example, binomial distributions, you've got Poisson distributions, exponential, what have you. There are a whole lot of that. You can use regression techniques, etc. The last data analytical technique that we can talk about are prescriptive analytics. Now, these are some of the techniques that basically we require huge amount of data, for the accuracy of this. But this is something that can use, predictions, models, and this will then try to go about giving you some results from analyzing similarly past, trends and historical trends, etc. They can give you more prescriptive analysis into certain aspects. Again, Some examples that you can use is what we call as a design of experiment, or DOEs, or FMEAs, etc. Now again, internal auditors can use a combination of these techniques in various functions, and depending on what stage, we can use these techniques. If I can talk about it, within my current organization, what we try to do is we actually try to use, depending on the stage of the audit, whether it's a planning stage or a testing stage. I mean, whatever stage of the audit is, we can go about using these techniques. And as I said, you'll actually find out that more often you'll be using the top two, which is the descriptive analytics and the diagnostic analytics, the most, because all of these actually give a lot of insights into various processes, various data. More often than not, you'll be using these within audits, and all. The latter two can perhaps be used for more continuous monitoring techniques, again perhaps little lesser in audits. But overall, I think it's a combination of all this is what is important. As I said, it's important for the audit, the participants, and audit team, whoever is going on this whole analytics transformation journey, understand the kind of techniques that are available. Now, so this is more from a technique perspective. You also have some technologies that can be used, and again, this also, I think, is a separate discussion in its own. Again, there are a lot of technologies that can be used. I'll just talk about the more recent ones. Something that also we work on primarily, which are artificial intelligence, or what we call machine learning or ML. So what is artificial intelligence? It's more, frankly, where we've developed some computer systems. They're able to, perform tasks which normally require human intelligence. And they go about recognizing, some patterns. So say, for example, speech recognition, or say decision making. All this can be done using AI techniques. Now, as an analytical tool, artificial intelligence, it's actually changed the game, if you ask me, because using artificial intelligence, you can actually, this gives companies abilities or functions abilities to actually see new trends, new patterns in data again. And, you incorporate this, perhaps from a continuous monitoring perspective, almost real time, you'll be able to see that trend occurring live before you. So very, very powerful tool, very, very powerful technology. But as I said, this is something that we can go perhaps into much deeper insight in later sessions. But this is something that's definitely available, and people, I just thought this will be helpful for our participants to at least know and understand that something like this does exist. Now you also have machine learning, sort of an offset of AI. So basically, this is where we provide systems. They have an ability to actually learn and improve. Without being explicitly programmed. More from a neural network sort of a perspective. So they are all basically based on algorithms, which again recognize it and then accordingly learn whether this is good, bad, and so on and so forth. Call out exceptions, all that. And then there are a lot of other tools also that are available in the market, which you can use. So it's a combination of having these tools, incorporating them in these technologies, is which can give you that wholesome insight into data analytics again, and automatically the whole transformation that will come out of this whole activity. Now, another thing that you'll actually realize when you go about this analytics journey, and something that I can say again personally, which used to trouble me a lot. I already said data is freely available, but is it of use to you? Again, and you'll actually find, as I said, there's so much of data over there, but is it structured in the way you want it? Right. So one important element that we need to understand is what can we do to work with data. And I'm not talking of the discrete, the continuous data that we have when we use the in the techniques, but this is more of the structuring of data. What information can I get out of it? So we actually have what we call as structured and unstructured data sets. Now, what are actually structured data? So structured data are basically data which is in a more understandable or an organized format. You've got columns, rows, it's organized properly. You just go feed in that data into a database, again management system, and then you can accordingly take out whatever analysis you do. A very simple, like your basic ERP reports that you get, your customer data, financial data, all those are specific structured data sets. Now, the more difficult data sets are unstructured data sets. And this is, what are unstructured data sets? These are actually, data which have got no predefined format. Again, they're actually exist in free form. They're very text heavy. Again, and some examples of unstructured data sets can be emails, or open text fields that you have, even audio form, video forms, machine generated logs, social media feeds. There are a lot of these data sets available, which if you analyze properly, will definitely give you a lot of insights that you actually are looking out for. And that's why I just wanted to dwell upon this very important aspect, which I'm sure you'll also come across while doing audits. You'll come across a lot of unstructured data. I mean, I think getting those reports and all organized, I think that's the easy part, right? I think the difficult part is making sure how can you use these unstructured data, structure it in a form that will be useful to you, and then, going forward, gain intelligence out of it. So just wanted to share some sort of a, I don't know, perhaps a shortcut for going about, not a shortcut, I guess, more of a process of how you can actually going about analyzing some of these unstructured data. So first and foremost, I think when using unstructured data is, and as I said, you've got a lot of sources available. Make sure that whatever is your end objective, you actually look at the right source. So try to identify the relevant source of data that you have. Now, once you identify that source, you should make sure that you go about, you can prepare it for storing it into some sort of a database. Now, while storing it, it's important you'll have to go about removing some what we call as noise elements. And I'll give you some examples. So there'll be a lot of blank spaces, in the data set, or you'll have a lot of symbols which might not have any meaning with respect to that particular database. Again, so it's important that you go about changing those, removing those, eliminating those. And then lastly, once you do that whole standardization, you can then make some sort of a relationship. Now, just for example, you're looking at some emails, right? Or what you call as, some data sets which have got those text fields. So, and you'll find, with every, even in ERP and all, for every particular line item, you have a comment section. You might find people put in a lot of comments over there. Some of it might be useful, some of it might not be useful. But, from an audit perspective, or say an analysis perspective, you can get a lot of insights just by looking at that aspect. It's a little unstructured. If you go about structuring it the way you as we just talked about, you'll be able to get some information. Let me give you some. These are some real life examples. So we were actually doing some. We were doing an assignment on FCPA, or what we call as Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Right? We were just trying to review and see, okay, what can we go about doing that. What we realized is you look at some of the comments that are there with the respective line items, right? There are comments of, say, facilitation payments, or say, fact payments, or some of those phrases which might want you at least to go and question, okay, what is this? What is this facilitation payment? Or say a sales commission, whatever you might name it. I mean, the person might not realize it, but while making that comment, they might have given some sort of thing. But at least this is something you can go and review more and try to understand more. Or say, even another example is you're looking at, say, financial reporting, right? From a financial reporting perspective, you go about trying to understand, okay, what are the key phrases that's used over here, and you come across line items which are like reclass or adjust. Okay, then this is something you might want to definitely go and check. And all this will only be possible when you go and focus on that unstructured data as well. Otherwise, we might be doing the normal analysis that we will do with the numbers, but it's always, as I say, correlating that with the other set is what will give you more insight and more benefits. Again, and also let me give you another thing over there. Right now, you have a lot of analytical tools which can do a lot of what we call these textual analytics. That you see these text fields. There's a lot of textual analytics that you can go and see. You can actually use these tools. Just compare, say general ledger, journal entries from year one. I mean, year over year. Okay, what is the changes in just the text values that have happened? Any changes of that comes about can actually let you know either processes have changed in between, or something has changed which you can now try to go focus and do more questions on, right? So basically all these are more uh, uh, areas which gives you some sort of red flags, identify red flags that you can actually go and talk about more. Yeah, that's the idea of how you can go about using some of these activities more effectively. Now, just talking about, I mean, we can go about using data. I think doing data analytics is very easy. I mean, in the end, go put something, I mean, you'll get some output out of it. So getting an output is not a problem. It's what to do with it is what is important. And that's where I've realized again where you go wrong again. So just some things, where, which can, things that you need to watch out for. Scope issues is very important. As I said, perhaps the objective was one. However, you're trying to infer that objective with some data set which may have no correlation with this at all. It's something like a scope creep, which inadvertently happens, a lot. Because, and I, this is something that I've always told my team. You always have data. It's important to make sure that you get the data which is at the right place, which is more relevant to the objective that you have. And that's where it'll be easier for you to go about making more inferences out of it. Another thing you might want to look out for is understanding of these data sets, understanding of processes, because all these are correlated. If you don't understand this, you will not be able to make proper inferences. Completeness of data, also another important aspect. If data are incomplete, you'll be making incomplete inferences over there. So we've got to make sure that you ensure completeness of data. I think very important. Again and again, we've got multiple lists. I'll not go through all of them, but just some of them. False positives, I think this is also very, very important. As I said, using data sets, you might get a lot of insights, but not all of them are positive, or the actual inferences you're looking for. You'll actually have to go determine each one of them. Are they actually, with that particular logic that you said, are they actually the ones that you want to look for, or what's coming out? Yeah, you've got other things that you can do. Misunderstanding of results. I can't tell you, they've been multiple times. Again, you made some inferences again, but the way it got understood, the way it got inferred, we totally, misunderstood the results that came out of it. The activities that happened. We can go about it. Multiple times. So I think this is something that you do need to take care of. Training is a very important aspect. Again, we need to make sure that we talk about training. People are adequately trained. They understand. So it's not just about applying techniques. It's where to apply, what to apply, how to apply. All that is something that'll help again. And perhaps looking at some incorrect techniques. I think that's also important. As I said, that you need to go about understanding, what can be done over here. So these are just some examples that I said, and again, a lot of it was actually coming from experience where I saw that, okay, these are some things that did help. If you are aware about these things, you can definitely watch out for. Yeah, and this will actually help you get that credibility also, right? And credibility is important because it might be saying, okay, yeah, we get this. Is it of any use? So that evolution is always there. You should always go look out whether that particular, uh, you know, inference or that particular uh, tool set or whatever is happening is actually giving you the value, or do you need to go change the logic and go about these sort of things. Now, I think I've already talked for a very long time. Perhaps I don't know if there are any questions or anything. So
Sure.
let me just take a quick pause.
I think if anybody has any questions, they can put it in the chat box. I don't see any questions here. I think, but if anybody has any questions, they can get in touch with us, or they can get in touch directly with Amit. I think he'll be happy to answer them. Not today. If you don't want to ask something, that maybe at a later stage also, it's fine. Please, Amit, you want to continue or?
Yeah, I think I've got most of what I wanted to talk about. I just had some. I think there's this last slide of some examples again. Just coming what has helped me looking at using analytics to come up with some unusual. And I've not talked about the normal things over here. I just thought perhaps some of this can actually help do it. And it's all about perhaps approaching a particular thing. So say, for example, when you're doing, an audit or when you're just looking at, say, your trial balances, your ledger balances, again, we do normally perform, those vertical, horizontal analysis. But, and most of these analysis that I'm sure you'll agree would be done mostly, at an annual or a quarterly basis. But if you can use some of these the ease of these tools can actually help you look at data from a lot of different perspectives, rather than looking at it, say, these trial balances on a more quarterly or an annual basis. Say we do it on a higher frequency, say a monthly or a weekly basis. Doing it at a more granular level, you might be able to come up with some unusual changes that are there. Just some example, you do it, say, on a weekly basis. Again, you might see, okay, there are some areas which have got some, okay, so for some specific, say, locations, you're getting some high numbers over there. That can raise up some red flags and go about doing it. So, I mean, what I'm just trying to say is that looking at data sets from different views and looking and using analytics, and using these tools is something that will definitely give you much more insight into a process that you may perhaps have never been able to highlight or never would have been able to figure out. I mean, I can talk about, say, another one, the second that I've talked about over here of, who's posting. Just a simple this thing. You've got ledger details, users they go post it. Again, you understand the process, the number of entries, these sort of analytics are pretty much common. But when you go and analyze this further, you actually see, so say, for example, one person, he typically goes and posts, say, just inventory costs, and then one day suddenly comes up, he posts a fixed asset. So that can be a red flag. Okay, why suddenly? Either it's an error again, or I don't know, possible fraud or some red flag, which can some indicator that can come and for have you, go and look at this thing. That can definitely be something that you might want to go look into it. Another example where we've actually used analytics is, say, for example, looking at our say sales figures that what we have. We've got daily sales, expenditures, etc., that we have, and a lot of it are geo-specific and all that as well. So while going about looking at these expenses, you might see there are some days, say for example, you don't have either sales that have been recorded or a very high number of sales that's coming out. So this basically shows that either there might be some errors in between again, or perhaps the processes are not being followed diligently. Posting is done on an ad hoc, everything is done. So this might show that processes are more prone to error. Then perhaps you can easily go look for operating effectiveness gaps and those sort of things again. Comparing year-on-year trends, again looking at average, standard deviation, and all. That's something that I've found is very, very useful and helpful. It just gives you, as I said, some indications or some more areas that you might want to look into. Yeah. So again, and I can keep going on and on of how we can go about using it. But I think long story short, it's been around, I think 7-8 years since we've started to try to use analytics in our audits, and other activities. And I can see that it has definitely helped audit become more productive and more focused. We are more risk. We are able to do more risk-based. So there's more value that we have been able to create because we're able to single out the problem, more effectively, more faster, and perhaps the management also then sees that value. So I think that's why I just wanted to share my experience, as I said, and I hope, as I said, this would be of some help, to all the participants. In fact, Mr. Deepji, I just want to thank you also for having me over here, for being kind enough to ask me to speak over here and share my experience. I hope it was of some use.
Sure, absolutely. Amit, before I comment on this, there's just one request from one of the participants, Dolly Majumdar, that if you could share your email ID, maybe, so that maybe you can type it out, or you can just speak about it, so that they can, participants, they want to connect with you later to discuss the topic or something, they can get in touch with you.
Sure. My email ID, everyone can note it. It's AmitSharma5@hotmail.com.
AmitSharma5@hotmail.com.
Yeah, you can also catch me on LinkedIn. You can just do a check of Amit Sharma and EXL. I'm sure you'll be able to find me.
Great. I think we can just close this presentation, maybe, Amit. But what I would like to say is, this has been a wonderful presentation for two reasons. One, this is coming straight from the heart. As I was listening to it throughout, it is coming straight from the heart. That's a practical thoughts which you have tabled, your journey, without any jargon, without any technical details, more mundane, more down to earth. But that is what analytics is all about. You can make it jazzy, but ultimately it's roll up your sleeves and go to work, because that's how it'll work. Even the examples which you gave, when we, of course, we have an interest in idea. So when we talk about idea or any other tool, you forget about idea, but you use any other tool along with idea, or some other tools like idea, which are analytical tools. And you can see all those, text searches, which you talked about, very important, which people usually miss out. Comparing trial balances, unusual activity in trial balances, different periods, patterns in revenue and expenditure for a company, who's posting what volume, suddenly have this changed, what's happening, splitting of POs. So as you're speaking, you have few hundred tests running through your head, because it's happening this way here, this in this company, this corporate, so it's so many things which are happening all the while. And these analytical solutions allow you to actually work and get a handle on internal audit, make it more effective. So I think
absolutely, and I think it's a perhaps a standing testimony to using all this within our organization. As I said, has definitely helped us evolve and get more value out of the work.
Absolutely. So I think there's such a lot of work, there's such a lot of wonderful thoughts which you give in very simple terms. So I just want to, on behalf of Summer Audit, Systems and Software Private Limited, on behalf of our entire team, and on, I would personally like to thank you for spending this time. This will be there in our archive in the library. It will be very useful to people. So thanks a lot, Amit, for being with us today and sharing your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. And as I said, I hope this is of some use to our participants.
Absolutely. And thanks a lot for all the wonderful participants who joined us today again, and hope to see all the participants next week, same time, same day, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.